In November 2024, investigative journalist Emily Hamer, reporting for Lee Enterprises, released a groundbreaking article titled Mass Starvation, a Doomsday Colony. The message inspires dangerous cults worldwide. This piece, co-authored by Tim Steller of the Arizona Daily Star, exposes the dark underbelly of fringe religious groups inspired by the teachings of William Branham, whose Message of the Hour movement has birthed splinter groups responsible for disturbing atrocities around the world. Hamer's report uncovers a chilling network of cults, some with direct connections to Branham's teachings, and the consequences of unchecked cult influence across various countries. Through her article, Hamer highlights Branham's substantial influence on high-control religious sects globally. Despite Branham's death in 1965, his teachings persist due to the work of Voice of God Recordings, headquartered in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Voice of God Recordings continues to distribute Branham's sermons worldwide, allowing his theology to spread widely, including areas in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. Hamer's investigative report is the result of a year-long effort to uncover the horrors and human rights violations associated with Branham-inspired cults, and examines how Branham's end-times theology, reinforced by Voice of God Recordings, is linked to some of the world's most destructive cults. Though VOG has a strong presence in Africa, including an office in Kenya, proudly displayed on their website, branham.org, describing the efforts to publish and distribute the cult propaganda into Africa, VOG spokesperson Jeremy Evans denied having knowledge of why Branham's materials were spreading into Africa. Evans stated, "The majority of material goes to the African countries. We don't know why." Rick Ross, executive director and founder of the Cult Education Institute, said Mackenzie was influenced by the teachings of Branham and David McKay, founder of a group called the Jesus Christians. Ross said there are certain doctrines Mackenzie taught that are, quote, signature Branham. A primary focus in Hamer's report is the horrifying Shakahola Forest tragedy in Kenya. The incident, which came to light in March 2023, involved the mass starvation and death of hundreds of followers of Paul Mackenzie, the leader of the Good News International Ministries. According to reports out of Kenya, Mackenzie instructed his followers to fast to death, promising them that this ultimate act would ensure their place in heaven. Authorities discovered mass graves containing the bodies of 429 individuals, including numerous children who suffered from severe malnutrition and, in some cases, physical trauma. The tragedy underscored the devastating impact of Branham's teachings on vulnerable populations, particularly in developing countries. Mackenzie, like Branham, focused on apocalyptic themes, declaring that the end times were near and encouraging his followers to disconnect from the outside world to escape eternal damnation. Kenyan detectives investigating the incident identified Branham's influence on Mackenzie, stating that Mackenzie brainwashed his followers using Branham's end-of-days theology to reinforce his starvation teachings. Hamer's reporting and subsequent findings reveal how these dangerous ideologies attract isolated or desperate individuals susceptible to extreme interpretations of religious messages. For Mackenzie's followers, the promise of eternal life meant the willing embrace of death. His message was taken to the extreme, resulting in some followers dying from starvation, suffocation, and physical injuries, according to forensic reports from the Kenyan government. The Shakahola Massacre stands as one of the most significant cult-related tragedies of recent times, second only to the Jonestown Massacre in scale, with over 400 confirmed deaths. Among the treasured religious possessions in Mackenzie's death cult were several booklets published by VOG's sister company, Spoken Word Publications. Authorities in the investigation in Kenya stated that Branham's sermons were used to radicalize the cult. Detectives told local newspaper People Daily Kenya that Mackenzie brainwashed his converts using William Branham's end-of-days theology. Hamer's article meticulously traces the spread of the message beyond the United States, pinpointing key regions where Branham-inspired cults have emerged. In addition to the Shakahola Massacre, Branham's teachings have inspired other destructive religious communities in places like Chile and Arizona. A Branham-inspired colony in Chile, Colonia Dignidad, became infamous for subjecting its members to harsh physical punishments and using the commune as a torture site during the Chilean dictatorship of the 1970s. Voice of God Recordings, established by Branham's followers, continues to distribute his teachings in the form of sermon recordings, booklets, and digital materials. Hamer's research shows how this organization, while claiming to be a religious nonprofit, has facilitated the spread of Branham's controversial doctrines. Despite facing criticism and backlash for its connections to extremist offshoots, VGR insists that they only provide Branham's teachings as they were originally intended. Hamer's investigation does not stop at documenting the atrocities committed by these splinter groups. It also brings attention to the lack of accountability within the message community. She reports how former message adherents describe the structure of Branhamite congregations as decentralized and resistant to outside influence or oversight. Most Branhamite churches operate independently, leaving room for rogue leaders to exploit their positions of power. Tucson-based Golden Dawn Tabernacle, for example, uses Branham's doctrines to exert control over congregants, from finances to health decisions. Even when governments intervene, accountability remains elusive. In the case of Paul Mackenzie, who is currently awaiting trial on multiple counts of manslaughter, the Kenyan judicial system has faced repeated delays. According to the November 13, 2024 update, the trial was postponed to March 2025 due to a shortage of prosecutors. These delays have raised questions about whether justice will be served for Mackenzie's victims. Advocates representing Mackenzie argue that the constant adjournments violate his right to a fair and speedy trial, as Mackenzie and many of his co-defendants have been denied bail and have already lost 3 members while in custody. The Shakahola case is symptomatic of a broader failure to address the dangers posed by cult leaders exploiting vulnerable individuals. Kenyan President William Ruto condemned Mackenzie's actions as antithetical to true religious beliefs and announced a national task force to develop stricter regulations on religious organizations. However, Hamer's report shows that these types of legal responses are often too late to prevent tragedy, and that global efforts to address religious exploitation remain inconsistent. Hamer's article also dives into the manipulation tactics commonly used by cult leaders who derive their beliefs from the message. Mackenzie's Shakahola Forest commune, like other Branham-inspired groups, relied on psychological control and isolation to solidify followers' loyalty. According to investigative reporters, Mackenzie allegedly ordered members to destroy all government-issued identification, including national IDs and birth certificates, to sever their ties with the outside world. This tactic aligns with a central tenet of Branham's teachings, which often promotes separation from secular society in preparation for an impending apocalypse. Hamer's reporting on the tactics used by message cults reveals a pattern of exploiting followers' fear and devotion. Through isolation, physical punishment, and religious indoctrination, cult leaders create a closed-loop environment where members view them as divinely appointed figures. This isolation extends beyond physical distance. Followers are encouraged to reject any information or opinions that counter the cult's beliefs. For those within the group, such as members of Mackenzie's church, questioning the leader's authority or actions could mean facing violent repercussions or social exclusion. The cases of the Park Commune in Arizona and Colonia Dignidad in Chile echo this pattern of control and abuse. In Arizona, Branham's followers created a tightly controlled trailer park commune where physical punishment was common and child abuse allegations eventually led to its dissolution. In Chile, a self-declared prophet inspired by Branham created Colonia Dignidad, a closed community known for its brutal practices, including child abuse and forced labor. Hamer's investigation into Branham's influence and the destructive sects associated with the message highlights the need for sweeping reforms to address these threats. While some government officials and religious groups argue that tighter regulation on religious organizations is necessary, others warn of the risks of infringing on religious freedom. Kenyan officials, for example, are caught in this debate as they grapple with how to regulate fringe religious sects without violating constitutional rights. Experts Hamer consulted argue that the cultic aspects of the message movement point to a deeper issue of unregulated religious groups exploiting their members. But some message leaders insist that the actions of Mackenzie and other extremist leaders do not represent Branham's teachings. Joseph Branham, William Branham's son, denies any connection between his father's theology and the atrocities committed by followers like Mackenzie, though former adherents suggest that the cult's structure allows for such abuses to arise. Emily Hamer's investigative piece sheds light on the dark world of the message movement and the global threat posed by cults inspired by Branham's teachings. The report not only chronicles horrifying acts like the Shakahola Massacre, but also explores how weak accountability structures, manipulative leadership tactics, and theological distortions make the message a fertile ground for high-control, exploitative sects. As Hamer's reporting unfolds, it highlights the urgent need for societies worldwide to address the dangers posed by fringe religious movements and to safeguard against destructive cults such as William Branham's message cult of personality.